What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time to kick off our 2024 predictions for the upcoming 2024 college football season. We kick them off with the Michigan Wolverines, of course, the team that won it all last year in 2023, winning the national championship and finishing undefeated, a perfect 15-0 season for them in 2023. So this was a very dominant Michigan team last year. My thoughts on them as they head into 2024, obviously a lot of roster turnover for this Michigan team, not going to be the same team as they were from last year, of course. Lost a ton of guys on the offensive side of the football. I do have some concerns about the offense for Michigan this year. J.J. McCarthy is gone at quarterback. Blake Corum, one of the top running backs from last year, is gone as well. And they lose so many weapons, just a lot of weapons on the offensive side of the football. Jim Harbaugh, of course, gone as the head coach. That's obviously a big loss there for this Michigan football program. Defensively, I think they'll be okay there. They're not going to have the most talented defense in the country, and it's definitely not going to be the same defense that we saw for the last 3 years. So Michigan, a brand new roster and, a new head coach this year for 2024. So let's go ahead and get to the schedule now for 2024. Here is the schedule for Michigan, again coming off a 15-0 season last year, overall in 2023. And let's go game by game here and give you a record prediction here for the Michigan Wolverines for 2024. They will start things off with Fresno State on August 31st. Fresno State, not going to be an easy game here for Michigan to kick off the season. I think this will be a game that, Michigan definitely does sleep on a little bit, going into that Texas game the next weekend. I think they're probably looking ahead to Texas, and they're probably not, focused on Fresno State. First half of this one, I feel like it will be a close one. Fresno State's not a bad group of 5 team, but second half, I think Michigan comes out of the locker room and figure out ways to really, get the win and everything, and I think they pull away in the second half. So I got the Wolverines. I think they start off 1-0, and they take care of business against Fresno State there in the second half. And again, I got them starting off 1-0. Then there's the big game at home against Texas here in week number 2 on September the 7th. We saw the time for this game. It will be a noon Eastern time kickoff. Very interestingly, it's not a night game, but it is a noon game to kick off this game. You look at both of these teams and you look at the differences between these two teams and the rosters. Texas obviously definitely a more experienced roster and definitely a more talented team. Both of these teams did, of course, made it to the playoff last year, but again, Texas, they have the more experience of a roster and definitely the more talented roster as well. Quinn Ewers will be back at quarterback, obviously, but Michigan does have the home field advantage otherwise. But I think playing at Ann Arbor, it's still going to be a very tough game here for Michigan to play Texas. Last year, of course, Texas was definitely a team that definitely surprised me a little bit. I think they're going to be really good again this season. And normally I do go with home field advantage if this is one of those tough non-conference games to call, but not this year. I'm doing something a little bit different, choosing the more talented team and definitely the more experience of a roster, and that's Texas. Texas has the more talented roster than Michigan does. So with that being said, I do like the Longhorns in this one, a low-scoring type game. I'm going to go with Texas here. I think this game does go into the fourth quarter, but I'm going to pick Texas here. I do like the Longhorns a little bit better than Michigan, and I think Texas does pull off the win here in Ann Arbor, and that gives Michigan their first loss of the season. And then they play Arkansas State after that. They do take care of business in that game, so Michigan bounces back after the loss, and they start off, or actually I should say they improved to 2-1. And then they play USC after that here at home on September 21st. First conference game here of the season for Michigan. You look at USC, for newcomer, of course, coming over from the Pac-12. USC is going to have a really good offensive team. We know that Lincoln Riley likes to run that offensive system. Defensively, I do have a lot of concerns there for the Trojans. The difference here between these two teams, USC has a better offense than Michigan does. And then defensively, I think Michigan has a better better defense than USC does. But, this game will be a shootout. I think both of these teams will score a lot of points. End of the day, though, it's a tough game to call, so I'm going to go with the home field advantage in this one. I think the Wolverines do start off Big Ten play with a win over USC, and that puts their record here at 3-1. Next game at home against Minnesota on September 28th. Home game here for Michigan. This is a very tough one here for Michigan. I think it's definitely a trap game in my opinion because Minnesota definitely has a very experienced roster coming back this year. You look at Minnesota, they could definitely be a dark horse contender in the Big Ten this season with the amount of experience that they have both coming back on both sides of the football. But this one's a very tough one to call. I mean, Michigan definitely is playing at home in this one. If this game was on the road at Minnesota, I would definitely take Minnesota with the upset. But Michigan is playing at home in this one. I do trust Michigan to, come up with something to pull away probably in the fourth quarter. But I think this game definitely comes down to the wire. End of the day, though, I do think I'm going to go with Michigan here just because of home field advantage, and I think Michigan does defeat Minnesota, and that puts their record here at 4-1. Then next game is on the road at Washington on October the 5th. First true road game here for Michigan on the season. Both of these teams, of course, met in the national championship last year. Michigan definitely was the more dominant team than Washington was. Both of these teams are very, not very well experienced rosters. Both of them coming off some turnovers on the roster and everything. You look at Washington, new head coach for them this year. The offensive side of the football is what I'm mostly concerned about for the Huskies, and then defensively, I'm also concerned about the defensive side of the football as well for Washington. I think both of these teams are pretty even. I mean, I know it's a home game for Washington. I definitely would choose Washington in this one, but I think Michigan definitely has the more talented roster than Washington does. Again, Washington lost a lot of experience last year. So did Michigan, but this is a tough one to call. End of the day, though, I do trust Michigan's roster a little bit more. And with that being said, I think I'm going to go with Michigan here to pull off the win on the road at Washington. I know it's a pretty tough game to call, but I'm going to go with the Wolverines here to go on the road and beat the Huskies here on October the 5th. On the road. They get a bye week after that Washington game before playing Illinois here on the road on October the 19th. Illinois, I think, will be a little bit better this year, maybe more competitive, maybe not make it to a bowl game, but this is definitely one of those upset alert type games in my opinion. The game is on the road. It's at a very tough place to play at Illinois. Illinois is also known for pulling off upsets over the years against some of the top teams in the Big Ten, and I think this is definitely one of them. I think Michigan does struggle in this one. Illinois, I think, will be fired up for this one. The home crowd will be right behind them as well. This is a game that probably will be sold out because it's against the defending national champions. Again, Michigan not going to be the same team as they were from last year. But I think Illinois, they'll play their best game here of the season. I think they're going to wear down that Michigan offense. And I think that Illinois' defense is going to be pretty much the one reason why they win this game. So I'm going to go with the upset here. I'm going to pick Illinois to upset Michigan on October the 19th. They get the win here and give Michigan their second loss of the season. So that puts Michigan's record at 5-2. Then they come back at home to play a rival game against Michigan State on October 26th. Michigan State, of course, new head coach this year. We don't know how good the Spartans are going to be. Michigan is playing at home in this one. I do expect a very competitive game between these two teams. I think both offensive teams are pretty even, and then defensively, I think both teams are pretty even as well. But, Michigan is playing at home. Tough one to call here. I'm going to go with the home field advantage at the end of this one. It is a rivalry game, I should say. That you can never know what can happen, but I'm going to go with Michigan here just because of the home field advantage, and I think they do defeat the Spartans here, and that puts their record at 6-2. Next game, they play Oregon here on November 2nd, a big-time game here in the Big Ten, of course. The Ducks have a lot of hype coming up this year, a very talented roster coming back as well, and Dylan Gabriel, of course, the transfer from, Oklahoma and UCF, has a lot of experience at the quarterback position. And again, this Oregon team is just going to really be a talented roster. Dan Lanning has known for his talented rosters and a very talented defense as well. He does have a defensive system, and I think Oregon's defense might be really good. This is a very dangerous Oregon team. Maybe not as dangerous as Texas is. I think Texas and Oregon are both pretty even teams, but just like the Texas game, I do really like Oregon's roster a little bit more, and I think the talent is definitely more talented, of course, than Michigan's roster. So I'm going to go with the Ducks here to pull off the win here against Michigan at Ann Arbor, and I think they'll give Michigan their third loss of the season, and that puts Michigan's record here at 6-3. Next game on the road at Indiana on November 9th. So just like the Illinois game, this is definitely one of those other trap games here for Michigan on the road here at Indiana. Indiana, of course, probably going to be a little bit improved this year. They brought in a ton of new guys from the transfer portal, new head coach this year, obviously. Michigan, though, I think they're the more talented roster roster. I don't know how good Indiana is going to be. I would definitely take Indiana in this one, but they have a first-year head coach. We just don't know how good the Hoosiers are going to be. I think Michigan does get off to a really slow start in the first half, but I think second half they'll pull away, and I think Michigan does win this one here on the road at Indiana. And I got Michigan bouncing back, and I think they'll improve to 7-3, and then they'll play Northwestern on November 23rd. They get a bye week before playing this game, which I think really comes at a good time. Northwestern obviously is another trap game, especially when it's at home, just like the Minnesota game. Northwestern's going to have a pretty good defense. I think offensively is where I'm concerned about for the Wildcats, but defensively I think they can keep Michigan's offense from scoring a lot of points. I think both of these defenses will be probably ruling the day, but home field advantage probably does favor the difference here. I'm going to go with Michigan to pull off the win here against Northwestern. I know Northwestern could be a team that probably could upset Michigan here, but I'm going to go with the home field advantage, and I think the Wolverines do win here and improve to 8-3. And then the last game of the season is on the road here at Ohio State. The game, of course, the rivalry game that everybody looks forward to every single year. Michigan has beaten Ohio State now for the last 3 years. Will they make it 4 in a row? I mean, Ohio State's definitely a more talented roster than Michigan is. I mean, obviously the differences between both of these rosters. Ohio State has recruited a lot of players from the transfer portal. They brought in a ton of good recruits this year. And the fact that it's on the road at Ohio State, I just don't really think Michigan has enough of a roster here to, go on the road and defeat Ohio State for the 4th year in a row. I think the Buckeyes finally get their losing streak, over with, and I think they finally end the streak here against Michigan. It's a close game. I think the Buckeyes will pull away probably in the 4th quarter perhaps. But I'm going to go with Ohio State here to pull off the win, and I think they give Michigan their 4th loss of the year. So my official prediction for the Michigan Wolverines is 8-4 for 2024. So yeah, very big step back for Michigan. Again, this team is going to have a lot of roster turnover for 2024. Jim Harbaugh, of course, now gone. The record would definitely be different. He was still here. I think they can definitely beat Illinois on the road, but again, that's going to be a very tough game on the road. I think I can also expect them, them to lose to probably to Washington or Indiana. Maybe Minnesota's a game that probably could be a trap game as well. But if this Michigan team doesn't make it to a bowl game, that definitely will be a big shock to me either way. But again, I think Michigan does finish 8-4 here for 2024. That is my official prediction here for the Michigan Wolverines. Let me guys know what you think about this Michigan team. Give me your prediction for this Michigan team down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.